First of all, how do you pronounce your full name? Because on your Instagram, is it Gavi?
Yeah, Gavi. Yeah, Gavi Kutliroff. My full name's actually Gabrielle,
Okay,
but literally no one calls me that.
so you go by Gavi.
Yeah, I go by Gavi. Yeah, and then I'm sure you know that you know the artist names under Pleasant Peasant's what I've been going by and for like a year now.
Yeah, where the hell did that name come from?
Yeah, in it was based on a lyric that I wrote so I put out don't look them up, but I put out under my real name,
Mhm.
under my Christian name. I'm totally Jewish, but in my under Gavi Kutliroff, I put out two albums, just a bunch of solo acoustic stuff, like that I kind of very like quickly recorded, what like throughout different once in my gap year before college, and once I think between my freshman and sophomore year of college, and those were under my actual name. And there was a song on there. Oh God, I don't even remember the name of the song now. It was so long ago. I think I recorded this when I was 18.
Oh,
But
geez.
yeah, but there was a lyric in there that I've always loved. It was like pleasantries of peasantries. I was like, I mean, I've always been into wordplay, but at the time I was like really messing with that kind of thing. And the line, it was this very, I don't know, I've always been really into like Fleet Foxes and like kind of like Lord of the Rings esque like
Yeah.
fantastical imagery and language, and that kind of always stuck with me for years. And it sort of dawned on me that like no one was gonna like remember the name Gavi Kutliroff after like seeing me on the street or at a gig. So I needed something catchy, and I loved the sound of Pleasant Peasant, and I thought that the language of it really captured my kind of indie folky vibe. And
Hmm.
yeah, I've been saying my brand is like pleasant and groovy. That's the
Okay,
sound
yeah.
I'm trying to create. So a bunch of the stars aligned on that one, I think.
Has it done you well, like branding under that name?
It's definitely it seems to be memorable to people.
Yeah.
So I think mentally I'm still like playing in my basement a little bit, even though I'm like trying to put myself out there a bit. Especially like I moved to New York in August and pandemic's opening up, and
Mm.
you know what I mean. So it's still like I haven't had the chance to kind of like put myself out there too much with it. But I like it. It seems to have a certain like stick factor for people, which is a good sign.
Yeah, well, it definitely stuck out in my mind. I was,
Yeah,
looking
mission
you up
accomplished.
and thinking of questions and things like that. I was like, pleasant, peasant, pleasant. I was like, wait, what is it again? So
Yeah,
it made me think, and I was like, I
yeah,
gotta get this right. I'm talking to the guy, like, I
yeah,
gotta get his name right,
yeah, yeah, totally.
And the aspect of putting yourself out there, from what I knew about you, because you came recommended from, a duo that I interviewed not that long ago, Late Night Thoughts,
Mhm.
is that you have done a lot of production work. So have you kind of started out, or I guess your career in music, did it start out with you more behind the scenes and now you're just starting to get into the front end?
No, totally the opposite, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting question. Apologize, by the way, for getting the sounds of New York City in the background here. There is no place in a 100-mile radius without them.
I was always awake.
Yeah. um, good place to live, tough place to do podcasts. But so anyway, no, I played. It's funny because I really like have I have like the opposite of a natural affinity for like gear, tech, anything electric, like at all. I don't even play. I play electric guitar, but I really like. I've mainly since I was like 13. I've like always. I don't even have an. I'm like very like puritanical about it. I don't even have an acoustic electric. Like everything is raw, and live, and I've just like really just like me and a guitar for like 10 years,
Hmm.
give or take. And then like a year ago, I came back. I was living in Israel for like 6 months just before the pandemic hit, and then when it hit, came back to America, and I was like living in my parents' house for like 5 months, and I had this like Blue Yeti like awful mic from like a Hanukkah present from high school that I had never figured out how to use, and like GarageBand that I had never really deciphered. And I was just like, okay, like the time has come. Like I'm a big boy now. Like I got to figure out how to actually make myself sound the way I
Time to
want to
get a new
sound.
mic.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And there was no, it wasn't like there was time to get a new mic. And it was like there wasn't any like gigging or open mics or anything.
Hmm.
So I was just kind of like, all right, like time to really like learn the studio side of things. So I just like voraciously, I like spent a ton of time on GarageBand on this with this like terrible mic, and that I didn't even like understand how bad my equipment was in the beginning. And I got into I wouldn't say I've done a ton of production work, but I've definitely been something I've like been exploring more.
Hmm.
And then I started interning in a studio in Queens when I moved to New York, and like learned a bit of Pro Tools, bit of Ableton, and just kind of. But it's still like it really just for the purpose of like to I find like mixing really interesting. It's something I've been trying to get into more.
Hmm.
And I've also, but like really just for the purpose of like making some of my own stuff and like how to get kind of like a live acoustic sound into a more like filtered, quote unquote, like electric or plastic kind of setting. That's
Hmm.
like my main kind of goal for production. I'd love to like like learn how to like make beats and produce hip hop and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
but uh, but like big goal is to like make acoustic music.
Yeah. And do you think from learning all this production stuff yourself, it's kind of helped you hone in more on your sound and what you've wanted to sound like?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's depressing as hell, man. It's production is it's a really weird thing because you have these like I was saying this a lot when I first started learning it, and I still feel like I'm first starting to learn it. But production is it's really like to use your language, right? You asked like if like I've always kind of been on the back end, and now I'm getting into the front end, which is I think a more traditional narrative for a lot of musicians. But it's like I was always front end, and I'm like now moving. I'm like trying to learn the back end of things,
Hmm.
and it's really it's a huge ego check because it's like there's a lot of self-doubt as an artist that you have to work through, I think, because in the beginning of like dealing with it, you really think like when you first record yourself, because you just don't know what you're doing recording wise, you sound terrible. And why would you? Or why wouldn't you? Like you don't know. I mean, you don't know
Yeah.
how to make yourself sound good. You don't know, like it's a totally other skill. And you think because you're a good writer and maybe because you're a good performer, that's going to mean that you know how to capture yourself on audio well, and that's
Right.
just a totally other skill set. So until I realized that like those were two very distinct sets of skills, I was like, wow, like I'm a shit artist. Like I can't make art that sounds good to people, and that must mean the art is bad. And it took some like discipline to realize like to like kind of you have to learn what you don't know and to kind of be like no,
Mm.
like I'm not as bad as I as I thought I was. And
Right.
I've been doing this for a long time, and I believe in what I'm producing. I just have to figure out how to package it well. Production to me is a lot about like packaging, or like
Yes.
I use the word like also like extraction a lot. Like you have a sound in your head or in your fingers, whatever it is, and you're trying to extract it and like manifest it well. And that's a skill. And if you don't have it, then you're gonna need to pay somebody else to do it for you, or you're gonna need to play live, and that's it. you know.
Yeah, for sure. Like I was just agreeing in my head about some of the things you were saying about with production because I kind of come from a similar background where it's like when I was going back to school for journalism and things like that, I have always had a strong background in writing and like editing and that kind of
Mm,
stuff. So like
yeah.
learning the production side of things is a whole different frontier. But once
Yeah.
you like know how everything works together, and it's similar with music, once you know how everything works together, like you just have like such an appreciation for the whole process and like it makes you like produce something even better.
Yeah, I think nowadays, especially when like hip hop is gigantic and like electronic and house music are just like it's unparalleled how big this stuff is. I think there's
Mm.
like an available stereotype of like this kind of like this very like mechanical engineering like vibe musician. You know what I mean? Like the guy who's like sitting at the mixer
Yeah,
or like whatever it is. Kind of. I was listening last night. I was just watching a bunch of like Sylvan Esso.
I don't think
Um,
so, no.
it was worth checking out. Just watching a bunch of them last night, but they're kind of like sort of like down tempo, like electronica kind of stuff, and
Hmm.
like I mean, essentially like it's like well past established that like electronics are like their own instrument by now, and I'm kind of this like much older I think stereotype of like the kind of like very like raw like kind of live acoustic artist that like just doesn't like is like I seem to offend anything mechanical, like anything metal doesn't like me. So anything with like a current running through it doesn't come naturally to me, I think. So it's real it's it is it's like it's like engineering. It's a
Hmm.
different skill set, and it's something I think of it as like something ugly but rewarding to learn, I think.
Well, now I have to ask you about your sound specifically and just like your musical influences because this was something
Yeah.
I put out to you before we got on about your Nirvana shirt, and you said I
Yeah.
think you said someone that you like but you don't sound like.
Yep. Yeah. I listen to a bunch of people that I love but don't sound anything like. um, um, Yeah. So I guess you're asking. It sounds like you're kind of asking me two things, almost like what are my influences, and then who are the people who I love but have nothing to do with my sound.
Yeah, yeah, you could say
Yeah,
that.
yeah. That's kind of how I'm hearing that. It's funny. My favorite band of all time is like Counting Crows. They're who I grew up with.
That's a nice one. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Big like childhood idols. My dad used to play a lot of them when I was growing up around the house. So I have a tremendous admiration for them. They write a lot of band music, and I just coincidentally ended up doing a lot of solo stuff.
Hmm.
So I think I went in a bit like I think I could have potentially gone more that direction, like sound wise, had I had a lot of other people to play with growing up. But it was like mostly did ended up just like doing a lot of stuff alone and like developed kind of a different sort of sound. But just because lack of resources. But I love up there. Also like grew up a ton with like Dave Matthews. It's like huge influence on me. I think the only thing I did ages like 13 to 15 is like play every Dave song. Um, yeah, I mentioned also I think before we went on the air, huge Fleet Foxes fan.
Yeah.
A lot of that a lot of that kind of thing. Simon and Garfunkel, Dylan is like also like my hero. Um, that's a lot of that kind of sort of like cross emotional indie folk kind of thing. But then outside of that, I mean, I listen to like a bunch of hip hop and
Right.
like a huge Nirvana fan also. And although I do think there is, as much as like joke about how like I don't sound anything like grunge at all. I think there's a lot to there. I think get a lot from that. Like there's like the kind of the raw emotional thing, very like structured style of songwriting, like kind of
Hmm.
like Kurt Cobain, not really giving a shit about who he's making music for. I think is something I aspire to.
Hmm. Yeah, when I was listening to your stuff, I was thinking like it's very, I don't know if this is the term, I don't know if this is still like a music term, but like worldly, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like it was
yeah, sure.
very, I was like, it made me think of Ireland. I was like, this sounds like I should be listening to this
Man,
like
I love that.
in a field, and like Ed Sheeran
Yeah,
is
so
like in the background,
I actually
like, you
listen
know.
to a bunch of Irish music.
Okay, so maybe I'm not crazy then.
No, you're not at all crazy. I'm actually that you're really it's actually kind of cool that it's shown through. The last song on my EP actually it's called Lullaby in parentheses in the Moonless Main Tide. I was out on it was a senior year of college and I was on a road trip with a friend of mine, Isaac, um, who what was I going to say? We went. It was actually it's a good story independently. Actually, we were like a week away from finishing Brandeis, and we were like, we're never going to be in New England for the rest of our lives, which is probably not true, but we were being melodramatic, and we were like, we've never been to Maine. Like, let's go to Maine right now. I had like a final the next day. And we drove out and we were in Maine for like 11 hours and
Oh
we
wow.
were walking along the beach on the Atlantic, which to me felt like it was like the end of the earth. It was like the coolest thing. Yeah, we were like kind of drunk. It was like 2 in the morning. It was like this,
That's awesome.
yeah, this beautiful scene. And I wanted to write something, and I started like getting some stuff in my head. And I've always been, but at the time was like very into Irish music. And
Mm,
I had this like little like kind of folksy melody that I initially wanted to that was ended up being the melody of the song. It was like that kind of thing, and it ended up what was I gonna say? That I was like literally I was like let me write an Irish folk song like about this setting right now. It like feels oddly appropriate,
mhm,
and I intended for it to be a cappella. And then I was playing with a friend of mine, Yitz, in when I was living in Jerusalem like a little
mhm.
bit over a year ago, and who's an extremely gifted piano player who's actually on 2 tracks on the EP, and he is. I was showing him the song, and I was like, "Don't play anything. It's like an acapella thing, whatever." And he just like ignored me and started playing this like heartbreakingly beautiful jazz piano over it, and I was like, "That's the song forever."
Mhm.
So it's funny because it almost like it like buried the Irish thing. Like you don't notice it as much because it sounds like a smoky jazz room kind of thing because of his
Right.
touch. But that was like that's like totally the history of the song. I was like really drawing from I like the I like the like world music tradition and kind of like the rawness of it and like the music that sounds like it's coming from a culture rather than a person, you know.
I like that. That's a cool way
Yeah.
of phrasing it.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that project. It's called Some Nice Songs that you put out
Yeah.
last year in 2020. You mentioned we just talked about the last song, like you mentioned
Mhm.
Lullaby. What about the rest of that project? Like what was it like putting that together?
Yeah, so it was kind of I had so like I said I put up two solo albums under my real name like a few years ago, and then I just never got around. It was one of those things that just just kind of I was also like in school. I was like, am I going to do this for a living? Like I knew I always wanted to make music, but I was kind of like it'll happen eventually. Like I don't I just never really got around to recording, and
Mhm.
then I ended up stuck at home with my parents for 5 months, losing my mind, and with all this like equipment and nothing to do with it, and I had like such a backlog of music Um, so the EP ended up being just 5 songs, but it was kind of like it was just some stuff. Two of those songs. So there was Lullaby. Oh, I almost actually forgot about this. I was recording a session in Israel before I left, where I thought I was going to stay longer.
Mm-hmm.
And I, with my friend Yetz, I was talking about on piano, and we were planning on putting out like, let's, I have this backlog. Let's do this like 7, 8 song EP. We'll kind of put ourselves out there, and we'll just like try to make it and like see what happens. Producer, very talented, other friend of mine, Ben Wallach, was producing it, and since this was like before I was into like producing my own stuff and that kind of thing, like we were talking about before, and and we ended up getting 5 songs in. 2 or 3 of them were like undeveloped. Two of them were the first song in the last. What ended up being the first song and the last song on the EP. Every Night
Gotcha.
Again, News and Lullaby, and both of which had to some extent been kind of sitting in my head for like a while, and on my phone, for like a while.
Mm-hmm.
And the other 3 were kind of unfinished. Then I rushed home and decided I wanted to move to New York, and when I was in Chicago over the summer working on kind of all this stuff, I had I kind of, so I had like those 2 sitting there, and I was like, it's a shame to not to just these got to go somewhere. And the other 3 kind of yeah, like things that had developed either while I was living in Israel or a bit before, and I just kind of wanted to. I was like really like eager to a little like hungry to like do something, put something. It had been so long, so it's kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, let me start my own motion here.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like came up with like the Pleasant Peasant brand and started a new Instagram, and I got on TikTok a few months ago, and everything, just kind of started like putting some stuff together and trying to like kick myself in the ass a little bit creatively. That's kind of where the project came from.
Yeah,
It
like
wasn't
pushing
like super
yourself. Yeah.
coherent. Yeah, it was very much like 5 individual pieces. I wasn't thinking of like I'm going to work on an album. It was more like I'm in a creative flow for like a few months, and let's kind of like see what comes out of it. And I finished it, and I was like, these are some nice songs.
It sounds like it was kind of a new experience for you. Is that correct?
Yeah, sort of. I had never really. I'm like writing on and off all the time.
Yeah.
I kind of I always say I kind of like write in batches. I'll like write um between like 7 and 10 songs over like maybe like a 6 month period that I like really like
Mm-hmm.
a bunch a bunch of other ideas that get scrapped or whatever, but that kind of thing, give or take. And then I'll go dormant for a few months and like hate myself and be like, I can't write, and this has happened for like years,
Right.
and I haven't learned my lesson. But so this time around, I'd always been kind of doing that, and then I would kind of put the batch aside, um, and uh, and then this time around, I was like, you know what, like now, like we spoke about before, like now that I'm kind of learning the mechanics of like how to get it online and how to make it how to package it,
Mm-hmm.
and like realize kind of the sounds in my head. What if I just try like this batch? I'll kind of put out myself, and I'll make it sound the way I want to, which was, yeah, really exciting. And I'm like working on a little bit more ambitious project myself, like just by small standards, but like right now doing I'm kind of onto sort of the next sort of batch.
Mm-hmm.
And also like I have a bunch of older backlog, a little bit of mix of like new and old for me, and not that anyone else will know the difference. And I'm trying to throw on some synth. I'm trying to get some friends in different cities around the world to like send me in some backing tracks and that kind of thing, and just like
Cool.
getting used to the kind of home production uh, thing.
The home studio environment.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting place. I'm like just getting over my like toxic combination of like intimidation and laziness. I'm like just like, okay, I know enough now, just a bit, that I can kind of like make the gears turn.
Yeah, I'm curious, how big would you say that backlog is that you've referenced now twice, I think, because I'm always just so fascinated when artists and musicians and producers just have so much material that stays in that log or just
Yeah,
goes unreleased. Like, is that
yeah,
stuff that you've just accumulated throughout, the past however many
yeah. It's
years?
crazy also to like think about myself in like if I have this backlog, imagine what like some of my like heroes who are like these deeply prolific writers,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm also like I'm a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, and I'm a huge Dylan fan, and not all the people I like, not all the people everybody likes are like putting out an album every year, but some of them are, and it's
Yeah.
crazy to think what doesn't make the cut. Like seeing my own on my phone, I just have a list of just to kind of kind of remind me, called like song roster. I think has been the name since like high school, and
Appropriate.
yeah, updated every now and then. What'd you say?
I said appropriate.
Yeah, yep. And so that God, it's got to be like minimum like 30 of just like up like if not more, but of over like a couple years
Mm-hmm.
of which by my standard is a bunch and yeah, and it always ends up getting recycled because every time I'll record anything,
Mm-hmm.
like new things will come around and the process takes time and stuff also falls by the wayside, man. Like stuff, it's a shame. It's a weird feeling because there's some stuff I'm like, man, that was really good. I wish I still cared about it. you know?
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting too, like that recycling aspect. It's like you might want to, when you revisit something, you might only like certain aspects of it, or you might realize you liked it more than originally. And
Yeah,
you're like, maybe
totally.
like I don't like this anymore. Like your perspective and like things change like crazy all the time.
Yeah, the phenomenon of like relevance artistically is like really interesting to me. I remember I think the first time I'd ever kind of like acquainted I was too young to like have I think I was 16. I was watching do you know John Butler? It's like
Sounds
the
familiar, yeah.
yeah, he's like an Australian he's a crazy guitarist. And I was listening to John Butler when I was like 16. I was watching a video of him doing this like classic crazy instrumental he has called Ocean, and it's like a 5 minute version of what's usually like a 20-minute song. And at the intro, he's like, he goes, I'm playing the song. He's like, it's still relevant for me. And I remember I was like 16, like everything was still relevant. I hadn't like been over a life phase that was like all of my life was the same phase.
Right, yeah.
And but and so I didn't totally understand that, but that always kind of stuck with me. Is like other stuff isn't relevant for you. Like what does that mean? But I remember thinking that as a kid, and it's so interesting to me now that like especially when I record, almost none of the stuff that I've recorded I will ever play again. It's kind of wild. Like unless I'm asked to, or doing something particular with people or whatever it is, or for old time's sake. But like,
Mm-hmm.
I find myself jamming on my own stuff sometimes, just to like work. When I'm writing or having a good time or whatever, expressing or whatever it is. Um, but I will rarely play stuff that's already been put to paper. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and but the stuff that does get like a couple songs like slip through,
Mm-hmm.
and those I know are like keepers. Like I'm like, oh, like this is the best stuff I've ever written. Like if I'm still playing it, it's like presented itself to me as still relevant. Otherwise, it would be long gone. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of it's an interesting. I'm like learning about my own creative process. I think.
Mm-hmm. Do you consider yourself a performer?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But it's funny you asked that. I don't, not in a conventional sense. I think, like, I think there's like an image of like I'm not, painting a lightning bolt over my face and like, I think I don't know if I consider myself a particularly charismatic person. But what was I gonna say? Like, I think I like I thrive in and prefer like the intimate setting much more.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like the coffee house vibe and I like the small dimly lit room and that kind of thing. But I really enjoy I really do enjoy performing. I find performance very like kind of symbiotic. Like I think like for some I don't really think of myself as an entertainer.
Mm-hmm.
I think like that's kind of something else. I don't necessarily always feel like I'm like I don't know like assuming a character or something. Although in a certain sense maybe I do, but if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like think of myself as an actor in any way, but for me, like performance is kind of like you're sharing something with people, and you're kind of like inviting them into like a little place in your head, and you're sort of all there together. So I really like
Gotcha.
in that sense, performance is very there is that's something I really get like a big adrenaline rush from doing is sort of being present with people.
Well, it's interesting you don't consider yourself much of an entertainer because on your Instagram you have yourself listed as a temporary
The
quarantine
quarantine
entertainer.
entertainer,
So,
yeah.
what's that like? What's that in reference to?
Yeah. That was just when I was like kind of building up the Instagram
Okay.
and now kind of a TikTok thing in the beginning. Maybe I am a little bit. I don't know. I think I also think there's two sides to me musically. There's like a little bit of there's probably a bunch of sides. But I think there's a lot of the stuff that I write and like the stuff that ended up on that EP, on the Some Nice Songs EP was that was kind of more I guess you'd call it like sincere, intimate, like kind of stuff I was writing like this is really how I feel and this is kind of like I guess the kind of the more to my core
Mm-hmm.
um is I like hesitate to use the word like deeper because it's like so cliched, but it's that kind of stuff is like felt like a little like deeper from inside me. But I mean music's a ton of fun and I have a ton of fun doing it, and especially when you're playing with other people, that's kind of it's like a different sort of different side of me I think musically comes out, and I think that side was also what I was like half and half what I was trying to do on the social media
Mm-hmm.
I think too, like a lot of like jokes and I was like messing with like the Mario Bros theme music recently, and
Right,
to
yeah.
that extent, maybe I do have an entertainer streak in me.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty fun. Like I would say that's a good way to get people entertained.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's like fun and beauty, I think, are like two overlapping but like very different um, like approaches to come at
Hmm.
music from. And you hear the greats do both. I mean, like that's why one of the things I love about Dylan is you hear like Dylan will like make you cry and shudder, and then like literally 5 minutes later, like in the next song, he's like what's that on Free Willin' where he's talking about like some he's talking about some politician I forget who, and he's like he's eating bagels, and like it's just like
Right, yeah.
you know what I mean, like Dylan's like making you cry and then using the word bagels in the same sentence. So
Yeah, it's insane. Who would have thought? Well, what about those two other projects that you mentioned that you released under your full name, like way back when? Were you performing with those at all? Like, because obviously, like now performances are not really a thing unless they're like live stream or
yeah,
anything.
no, I never really had the chance to get out and play them anywhere really. I was always like I'm like very much like from like Chicago suburbs, and never really like knew kind of how to like break out of the bubble musically and that kind of thing. And which is kind of in my head, I'm still like playing in my own basement. I'm kind of always like getting over that self image, and so a bunch of open mics, really, one or two open mics in particular. I used to like go kind of frequent a lot
Hmm.
when I was in Chicago in high school, and then when I was in Boston. Me and Harlow actually used to in late night thoughts. We used to go over to a bar Irish pub called Terry O'Reilly's in Newton in Boston,
Hmm.
and like play the open mic there. And it was like a really nice musical community. So I never really had the chance, I feel like, to like market or grow. That's like a little more what I'm thinking now is like, how am I going to kind of, where am I going with this?
Yeah,
Short answer, not a ton. Play on the street a lot too. I really enjoy
yeah.
playing.
Do you feel like New York is the place where you can really kind of start marketing yourself and like branding yourself more?
Yeah, I hope so. It's a great question. I definitely hope so. Which is different than yes. Those are two
Yes,
different.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a weird time. I kind of like things are like it feels like there's like the city's like hatching a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, but so I hope to. I'm thinking about I live on the Upper West Side right now, and over there isn't much going on musically. I think so. I'm thinking about a move to Brooklyn and trying to like break into the scene and meet other artists, and just, I don't have like crazy big plans in particular, but I'd like to just like plant my feet and introduce myself to the scene.
Yeah, because it's interesting just hearing you talk about all the places you've been. Like you said, you grew up in Chicago,
Yeah,
you went to school in
yeah,
Boston, you studied in Jerusalem for a
yeah.
little bit, like, and now you're in New York. So it's like maybe that worldly aspect we mentioned earlier is more relevant than you think.
Yeah, I think you might have a point there, man. I hope you're right. I mean, New York it's. I mean, look, I've been as a fan, New York's the coolest place to be in the world,
Hmm.
and I could not be more excited. Me and my wallet are like at drastic odds about being psyched about New York
I hear
opening.
ya. I hear
Yeah, I'm
ya.
gonna go broke as soon as concerts are back, but and they're starting to a little bit. But as a fan, it's like the coolest place to be in the world. Which means as a performer, it's there if you have the wherewithal and the talent to break in. I think so. I hope I do.
And how has your work and your music career kind of, I guess, either impacted each other or made it difficult for each other? Like before
Yeah,
we got on to, I asked you about that, and you work at a studio and you're also a guitar teacher. So how does that all kind of feed in to your artistry?
yeah. It's a great question. It's I think it's really it's just like goes to show that like there's like challenges are like not a sign you're necessarily doing anything wrong, more just like a function of being a human being. Because I think if I was really doing music full time, especially now, I imagine I'd be like a deeply, deeply frustrated person.
Hmm.
And I'm not doing it full time right now, but although I would like to in the future, but which makes me like way more at ease as a person, and also means I don't have as much time to focus on it as I'd like. So it is what it is. But I work in a really cool. I got a cool job that I like, and we're building up a business here to kind of rather saying like I work for a vocal coach and I teach guitar here myself, and we're trying to like book artists here to kind of like film shoots and have small gigs and kind of like an acoustic sort of thing, and like kind of half small music school, half small event venue. That's kind of
I
this.
like that. That's unique. I like that.
Yeah, yeah, come check it out, man. And a sort of just a multi-purpose like art space is kind of how we sort of talk about it. And so while I'm not technically like writing and performing full time by any means, I'm like very much surrounded by music all day,
Hmm.
which I love. And when I'm not, when I'm like doing the more business side of things, we're like helping to grow a community where, I mean, me myself and like a bunch of our friends and new friends are like going to be able to come and perform themselves. So it does feel really a really cool part of that world. And for the uh for the folks watching at home, I have like my mic set up here, right in my office, like in the studio, which is like a just like a little kind of home setup that I brought to work. So it's definitely like super freeing to like
Hmm.
feel like you're in a creative space all day. I really enjoy that.
It sounds like your work life and your home life are very similar because
Yeah.
you said your home
Yep.
setup is
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
in your
I don't have Matt.
office.
I don't have a. I envy people who can put up with a cubicle. I really. I
Oh
don't.
my
I don't
God,
have
I
a.
hear you.
Yeah. I don't have a. I don't know if it's a strength or a weakness, but I can't. I can't. I really can't take anyone's BS.
I just can't picture having a desk job for the rest of my life and being stuck
Yeah.
behind a cubicle. Like that's just not me.
Yeah. Totally. So I feel very like free to be myself, just personally and creatively, at my job, which is cool. Even if I'm not like literally like actually creating constantly, I don't have to step into somebody else's shoes. I'm not like
Hmm.
walking in and I'm like, hey Jim, how are the kids? Like you know.
Yeah,
So
want to go for drinks later? Golf tonight?
yeah, exactly.
All
Yeah.
the small talk. We don't need that.
So that's a big plus.
So do you have like a timeline in terms of when you kind of want to put out something next? Like you mentioned you're kind of working on stuff here and there, but do
Yeah,
you
no,
have like a certain timeline?
specifically not. It's funny because I really do work better under pressure. So
Hmm.
I should probably, if I wanted to like light a fire under my own ass, I would probably give myself a deadline. But
Hmm.
I like the open ended nature of where I'm at musically right now. I like that it doesn't feel rushed, and projects can kind of come to me as they come. And it's sort of exciting to just kind of like not really be in anyone's like I feel like I have a secret. You know what I mean? It's like that's like where I'm at right now. I'm trying to cherish it because hopefully if things go well once I reveal the secret, people will like it enough that they'll want me to do more, and then I'll be in a deadline.
Right.
So I'm kind of, for me, I'm like in, which is maybe I'm delusional, but and like no one will listen, and I'll continue to like to do an open-ended thing, but in my own head, it's a nice place to be, to kind of be like a little bit on my own time, for the time being, and put down ideas as they come.
Because do you have like some bigger like aspiration for yourself? Like you mentioned, you're not super into like, the bigger venues or any kinds of like those types of things, but do you have like
Yeah.
any other aspirations like to get
Yeah, I
signed
definitely. I
or?
mean, I would love, like, if I was, for sure, if I was paying the bills, like writing, performing, and like working with other artists, whether it's writing, performing, mixing, produce, like whatever. That's like, I think just like being on the scene, is definitely my goal. I mean, I really do love like writing and performing. I feel
Hmm.
like I said it like 4 times in the last 10 seconds. And if it's, yeah, if it's not clear,
Yeah, just
and
say it again. Just one more time for the people in the back.
ready for. So like, yeah, that's definitely, it's something like I'm working like very very slowly, like I said, kind of on my own pace. I think it's gonna shape up to be a fuller album. What I think
Hmm.
is gonna happen is I'm gonna have like 4 or 5 songs, like ready to go, and I'm working on a couple right now. And when they're done, I'll be like, should I put this out as an EP, or should I kind of take it all the way?
Mm.
Which is going to take longer, and more laziness and intimidation to get over. And then when I get over that hump, I think I'm kind of picturing like a 10, 11 song EP,
Hmm.
like, or 10 11 song album, and like sort of a fuller arrangements, some solo stuff, but like some friends joining in, and like produced, and I'm in charge of the sound, kind of like ground up sort of project. And then when I put it out, I'd like to, hopefully, stuff will be open by then,
Hmm.
more than it's starting to now, and I'll be able to kind of perform and join the circuit. That's like short term goals.
Yeah.
That's kinda how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm interested to ask you this because you kind of mentioned the EP versus like a full album
Yeah.
concept. What are your views on putting out multiple EPs versus putting out a full length album? Because I remember I was listening to an interview, I was watching an interview with Jeremy Zucker, and he
Nice.
had said that he
He's
like,
great, by the way.
yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
Like, and he put out a slew of EPs before he put out his debut album, which came out in, I think, last year, 2020 or 2019 maybe.
Yeah.
And he like was saying how an EP is like the perfect way to just experiment with the sound and then kind of like move on to something else or like
Mm.
keep using what you're using. Like, what are
Yeah,
your
that's
views
cool.
on that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a stylistic thing. On top of like explain what I mean. Like in on top of like subjective, it's just a person to person thing, like personal style. I think it's also a genre thing.
Hmm.
Like I think Jeremy Zucker is doing the kind of like I don't even know what to call it, like lo-fi pop stuff, and I think what he's doing, he's also really production heavy. So
Yeah.
there is a lot of musical experimentation. Like I think he thinks of himself as like a tinkerer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think there's
No,
a
he
lot
does
of
for sure.
yeah, and a lot of kind of what we were kind of like backtrack a little bit what we were talking about earlier about like these kind of like sort of like new age stereotype of a musicians who kind of think of themselves as almost more like mechanical,
Hmm.
like kind of like very like heavy on the production side and on the back end and that kind of things. I think Jeremy Zucker is like definitely part of that group, and I think in that world, EPs really work. And I totally like I see what he's saying a lot. It's like a very like I have the sound in my head. I want to mess with it for like 2 months and then like throw it out,
Hmm.
and like kind of or like learn from it and like see what happens next. Um, for me, I think of I love experimentation, but I think of myself less as like a tinkerer, I guess. More as I don't even know what to call it, almost like a painter. I think is a little bit how I kind of in my own head like
Oh, okay.
I have almost like yeah, like I have I have ideas and I'm trying to get them down and kind of present them and kind
Yeah.
of
You have like an image and you're trying to
yeah,
project it.
exactly
Yeah.
right, exactly, and like sometimes the sounds involve like experimentation
Hmm.
and something that's been in my head recently, but I'm not really doing it for the sake of the experiment as much as I like the experiment is like something that I'm learning from to kind of express myself, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So I think for that, an EP, I see an EP more as a way to like kind of send feelers out. Kind of like I have like 4 or 5 songs, and I want to kind of put them out and see where they land,
Hmm.
see how it feels, like see like the kind of like how it feels for me, like kind of the coherence of the piece. And an album is more of like a longer personal statement. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's like yeah, it's like an essay versus a book. I think also.
Oh, wait, that's a wow. That's a really good way to say it.
Yeah.
I like that. I've been like holding on to that question in my back pocket through so many
Yeah.
interviews, and I was
Yeah.
like waiting for the right moment to drop it and to ask someone, and I was like, I think you just would be a great person to ask that
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think releasing music is like such a. I mean, I'm fairly new to it also because, like I said, I've just been in my head in my basement for so many years that that I what was I gonna say? It's just it's a different dynamic and like I'm very like I said like since I tend to be much more kind of like grassroots about stuff.
Hmm.
I'm very like annoyed. Like the anti-corporate part of me is like very like is like I find marketing like a real chore, and like releasing I mean I'm on I don't really think anyone listens to albums anymore anyway, which is like a huge bummer, but when I if I finish this project I definitely want to put out enough just for myself, like screw those people. I like want to I have this is a project I want to put out and
Yeah.
I want people to experience it,
Yeah.
but at the same time I'm definitely going to look into like how to market it well and like putting out singles and how to like treat it both as a whole work and something to like kind of be friendly to the public.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, Gavi, like, thank you so much for coming on and
Yeah,
taking the time to speak with me. There's one thing I want to ask you that I haven't touched upon yet, and
hit
it's
me.
just with your voice specifically. I don't know what kind of comparisons or what kind of things that people said about your voice. Like, I'm just curious to ask you first before I am gonna say what I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, well, now you're right. You cliffhangered me, man. So
Yeah, yeah.
I gotta know now.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I people say I sound like Jason Mraz a lot, which like I don't know how I
Hmm.
feel about that. I don't dislike the guy. Not no strong feelings here or there, but I've gotten that. I don't know. I think my voice is like it's it's always funny. I definitely know it's distinct. I don't know that it's great. I don't
Hmm.
consider myself like a I'm definitely not like a professional singer by any means. I like to think I like sing well enough to sing my own stuff,
Hmm.
and like have fun doing it. But people tend to tell me that it's unique, and every once in a while I'll like get some like obscure indie artist on someone will like send me a Spotify link to and be like, this guy sounds exactly like you, and I'll be like, crap, he does. Like that's weird. But yeah. Why? Who are you hearing?
I was like, I don't think you're gonna see this coming,
Hit
but I swear to God, I heard Freddie Mercury in your voice.
I
I
did not see
swear to
that coming at
God.
all. Oh wow! I mean, I that's a tremendous compliment. It's from a purely technical standpoint, it's definitely wrong. I think that guy has 8 times the range that I do, but I'm a big Queen fan, big Freddie Mercury admirer, both personally and artistically.
Hmm.
But Yeah, I kind of hear what you're saying. We're both like dude tenors, which is like kind of weird.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say. It was your tone. It was definitely your tone.
Yeah, there's the yeah, I what was I gonna say? Um, I Yeah, sorry if you haven't noticed by now, I'm a big train of thought loser. But
No, you're good. You've been doing good
yeah,
this far.
when I was on a when I was on my speaking of before, when I was on my gap year program when I was in Israel before college, I was working on a kibbutz for like 2 weeks, you know, like a farm essentially,
Hmm.
and I was working on an organic farm for like 12 days, and there was a girl on the farm who I remember. She used to we were like friendly, and she would tease me. She was like friendly bully me. That's how
Hmm.
I like to remember it. And she was now we'd like mess around with each other, and she once told me, she walked in once and she was like, I heard, she'd never heard me play or sing before, and she's like, Gavi, like I was like around the corner today and I heard this beautiful sound, and I was like, who? And I'd never heard that voice before, and I was like, who is this beautiful girl singing?
Hmm.
She's like, she came over and she's like, it was you, like you were the beautiful woman. Like
Oh my
I was like, I'll
God.
take the compliment, I guess. Like, she like totally thought I had a girl's voice, and so I have like definitely a female register, which is I don't mind. I like my voice.
It's not the
I'm
worst
proud of
thing
it.
to have.
Yeah, not the worst thing to have, but Freddie Mercury is definitely kind of in a somewhat similar category. You know, definitely like he's got kind of the same register,
Hmm.
and I think he would like toy with that a lot deliberately. But
Hmm.
yeah, I thanks for the compliment, man.
Yeah, for sure. I was like, anytime I preface any time of like or any case of like comparison to musicians and artists, like it's not always, it could go both ways, like when you compare artists to one another.
Yeah,
But I'm always like, I don't want this to come off as a compliment, or if it doesn't come off as a compliment, like however you take it. But I was
sure.
like, I gotta tell him this, like this just,
No,
it
I've
just
never.
hit
I mean,
me.
I love Freddie Mercury. Maybe I should write more stuff like that on purpose. You know, because my speaking, I don't know why I have never been able to understand this, but my speaking voice and my talking voice are like in completely different people. I don't know why I sound like that.
It happens. It's all
Yeah,
about putting on a show,
yeah.
apparently. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, Gavi, thank you so much again. I really appreciate you coming on. Why don't you let people know where they can find you and find your music so they can look up your stuff?
Yeah, totally. Definitely check me out. I go by Pleasant Peasant. I'm under Instagram and TikTok under Pleasant Peasant Music, Pleasant underscore Peasant underscore music. If you look up Pleasant Peasant, it'll show up. I got my EP on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, anywhere you listen to music. Pleasant Peasant, some nice songs, and more coming soon. Follow me on social media and stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned on
Thanks to
TikTok, especially.
yeah, definitely. Thanks TikTok especially. Thanks to David and the On Rotation podcast. This has been a ton of fun, man.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. I appreciate it.